How's it everyone, Grant here, and welcome to my 2-day first impressions on the Xiaomi Mi A1. So I'll be walking you through and breaking down the different aspects of this device and letting you know what I think about it and what my experience has been about with it after using it for 2 full days here. But before we get into that, I first want to shout out one of my subscribers. One of my subscribers has actually sent me this to review, and that's definitely a first for me, and I'm very thankful and humbled by that gesture that someone would actually think enough about my opinion to want to send me a device just to hear my thoughts on it. So you know who you are. Thank you very much for this. I don't want to shout your name out because I don't want people hitting you up for a free phone or free devices. But if you do want your name shouted out in one of my videos that I'm going to do on this, because I'll do a few more, let me know and I'll gladly do that. So thank you very much for sending this out to me. It's much appreciated because this is actually a phone that I've had my eye on ever since it was announced. I'm a fan of Xiaomi hardware. I've had several of their phones in the past and I've really liked their hardware. Not so much a fan of their software. It is speedy and snappy. It's just visually not something for me. So when this was announced, I got really excited because you get the Xiaomi hardware with Android One, which is what the A1 stands for there, Android One. And all that means is that you're getting stock Android on Xiaomi hardware here, and you're getting guaranteed 2 years of OS updates at least, and I believe 3 years of security updates. So that's a huge win. You're getting some great hardware and you're getting the best of Google, stock Android, and updates for several years. So that's very awesome. And all that for right now, it's going for $220. So I'll leave a link in the description so you get the latest and updated pricing should you choose to pick this up for yourself. And full disclosure, it is an affiliate link. So any purchase made through that link, I'll be getting a portion of that sale. And it just goes right back into the channel. I pump that money back into these devices, and it's not like I'm making a ton off of each sale. But if you choose to pick one up, I would be appreciated if you did use that link. It really helps me out, helps the channel out. So all that being said and all that out of the way, let's kind of get into it because we have a lot of ground to cover. So I first wanted to start with the design and build quality. And yes, this is a very familiar design, but who's not copying off of who nowadays? But this is definitely reminiscent of some other phones that I'll bring in. And that's the first thing that anyone's going to notice and probably say. So this is the iPhone 7 Plus here. You can see very similar design. And check it out from the front there. And also the OnePlus 5. So it's probably closer to that if you look at it from the back here. So the OnePlus 5, not the 5T. So same camera module setup, aluminum design, and that's kind of the quick comparison because that's the first thing that people think of when they do see this design. But let's take a quick tour of the hardware. So like I mentioned, you have dual 12 megapixel cameras up there with dual tone LED flash. You have a fingerprint scanner in the right place there on the back. You can see the antenna lines are fairly well hidden at the top and on the bottom, not these big lines going across the middle. There you see some Xiaomi branding with the Android One branding as well. On the right side, you have the volume rockers and power button. On the top, you have a secondary microphone there, and you have the SIM card tray as well as micro SD card tray. They combine together, and the micro SD card can actually be formatted as internal storage. So you have adaptable storage on board on the Mi A1 here. On the bottom, you can see the speaker grill as well as the USB Type-C port, a microphone, and the 3.5mm headphone jack. So you get a headphone jack here as well. And we're definitely going to be talking about that headphone jack and audio performance a little bit later. So on the front here, you can see at the top, you have your earpiece. You've got the 5 megapixel front camera along with, I believe this might be the proximity sensor, I'm not sure. It does have a notification light embedded to the left of that, which is very nice to have. And on the bottom, you have the capacitive buttons here for your home, recents, and back buttons. The only thing I wish is that these were reversed. So these are a little bit opposite. So maybe traditional Samsung users will be happy about this. But since they're capacitive buttons and they're actual markings for the back and the recents, they're not interchangeable through software, but they are backlit. So that is really awesome to see backlit capacitive keys because a lot of times phones in this price range won't have backlit buttons. And to me, that's pretty key. And also you can see kind of along the sides is kind of that chamfered bevel edge. So a little bit of that kind of beveled side edges, which is a very nice touch there. It's a fairly light feeling phone, but it's not feeling cheap in any way. And the first thing when I saw this, it reminded me also of the Honor 6X. So if you remember the Honor 6X, it was a phone that was about $200 as well, that was released last year. And it also had this kind of metal design. Even from the front, they look very similar. So that's the first thing I thought of. And I really thought the build quality was gonna be similar to this. While it looks good, it actually kind of creaks a little bit on the 6X. No creaking here. It's a very solid design. Just a little bit of flex on the back when I press in here. You can kind of maybe see a little bit of flex. I can definitely feel that. Not a big deal, but it matters to some people, so I just thought I'd point that out there. And then we can actually go ahead and take a look at the fingerprint scanner. So there it is. Not the fastest, as you can see there, but definitely works. Very accurate. And it's not the slowest by any means, but it's certainly not the fastest, but more than acceptable for a phone in this price range. And that brings us to the display here. So it's a 5.5-inch IPS LCD display, full HD 1080p display, and it's a 16:9 aspect ratio, so you don't get that 2:1 new trendy aspect ratio here, narrow screen. You get the traditional 16:9, which to me is still the best for viewing media content like YouTube videos and all that. So if you like viewing videos on your device, 16:9 is still the way to go to me, even though you still got this pretty large top and bottom bezel. That really doesn't really bother me, but you're not getting that closer to bezel-less design with that 2:1 18:9 aspect ratio that phones are moving towards here. Even more affordable phones like this are moving towards here in 2018. So that might bum some people out because they're not getting the latest trend. But again, if you like consuming media, I think you're gonna like this. And for most people, you probably won't really care about the bezels as much, especially at the price point that you're paying for and everything else that you're really getting with it. And the display here, like I said, is an LCD display, but it does have some really nice and vibrant colors. Viewing angles are pretty good, as you can see here. And it does get very bright. So right now I've got the brightness down for the camera, but we can actually go into settings here and go into display, turn off our adaptive brightness and crank the brightness all the way up, and it does get very bright here. So a very nice, bright and vibrant display for an LCD panel. We'll turn it back down a little bit for the camera so it's not getting all blown out. And if you go back into display settings, there's no real display controls, so you can't tweak the calibration like the colors or the contrast or anything on the device. No real advanced display settings, so what you see is what you get. But I really haven't felt the need to tweak that display. It looks very good to my eyes, and I'm very happy with the overall colors, brightness, and viewing angles here on the Xiaomi Mi A1. So now let's talk about performance. And so this has a Snapdragon 625 with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of internal storage. And like I said, you do have expandable storage, which can be used as adaptable storage. So you can format it as internal storage, which is very nice. And so the Snapdragon 625 may not be the latest and greatest in the Snapdragon 600 series, like the 626, 630, 660. But it is a proven processor that has performed very well on a lot of phones, and more importantly has provided some really great battery life, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But performance on the phone is very snappy. I really haven't found any issues or lag on it, and actually moving through the whole thing, going through the recents, you know, bringing up apps and launching them, and Twitter, and as you can see here, even the scrolling within Twitter is pretty smooth. You're gonna get a little hiccup here and there, but most phones will actually hiccup in Twitter just because of all that media. But overall, some pretty smooth scrolling and some pretty smooth experience here. So I think most people are going to be very happy with the performance on the Xiaomi Mi A1. If you're doing typical things like checking your social media, browsing, YouTube, all that stuff, it's going to handle it just fine, and with some very nice, smooth performance there. And a lot of that is probably credited to the software as well, running stock Android. Not a lot of extra features or bloat to bog it down, so that just adds to the performance, speed, and fluidity that I'm experiencing here, I think. So let's talk about that software. And out of the box, it's running Android Nougat and very minimal bloatware, pretty much all just the Google apps. And I'll show you some screenshots of how it looked out of the box and what apps were pre-installed and how much storage was really eaten up. But since I'm a little bit late to the game here on the Mi A1, not too long after I was using it, I got the Android Oreo update. So as you can see here, the notification shade has that traditional Android Oreo look with that white background there. We'll go into the settings menu, and you can see here is the Android Oreo settings. And then we can even go into system, and you can see there on About Phone, we've got Android 8.0 with the January 1st security patch. So we are running Android Oreo here. And we can go into the Easter egg there. And so there you go, Android Oreo here running on the Mi A1. So that's really awesome. And we are in February, so this being an Android One phone, I'm hoping to get the security update very shortly. So I'll update you if I do in fact receive that. But again, being stock Android, you're getting very little additional features, so keep that in mind. It's a very stock experience, but one of the few features that you get that I feel is very useful is the fingerprint gesture. So if you go into apps and notifications, you can see you get that swipe fingerprint for notifications. So you get that swipe down gesture to bring down your notification shade. So that's very nice there. That's an actual useful customization here on the Mi A1. So that's the basic gist of the software. You're getting stock Android with very little features, but really snappy performance. But one of the custom things about this is the camera. So let's go into the camera app here. And you can see there it is Xiaomi's custom camera app. And so you actually get a portrait mode option. So if you just tap that icon at the top there, that puts you into portrait mode. As you can see there, portrait mode. So I'll throw up some pictures and video at the end, including some portrait mode shots, so you can see what the camera performance is like, at least for now. It does have HDR, but no auto HDR, so you have to manually toggle HDR on or off, as you can see there. So that's a little bit of a bummer. You have your flash control there, and you do have 2x optical zoom. So if we actually hit that one time, so very much like some other phones, you hit that and you get your 2x optical zoom with that secondary telephoto lens. So that's a very nice feature there. And if you go into options, you can see the different kind of camera modes that you've got, from panorama to setting your timer to group selfies, etc. So all that is there. You can add a watermark, which will just add the Mi A1 watermark onto your photos. And you can hit this for additional settings. So you get some basic settings there, as you can see, and where you would kind of change your resolution. Now, they don't tell you what the resolution is. You just have high, standard, and low. The other thing that I noticed is that you don't have 1080p 60 frames per second recording here. From what I can see, you can record at 4K, 1080p, and as well as 720p, but I'm not seeing a 60 frames per second recording option. So the other thing here is that the camera does have a pretty decent shutter speed, as you can see here. So not too bad there. And the one thing I'll note is that daylight performance has actually exceeded my expectations. I mean, most phones in good light will give you some pretty good pictures, but I would say this camera in good lighting produces well above average photos. Like I said, I'll show you some of those samples at the end, but in good lighting, you're gonna get well above average photos, and they actually surprised me at how well those photos are. And what more impressed me was the autofocus. So this does have phase detection autofocus, and the autofocus with good light focuses in extremely fast, which is very helpful for those tough up close macro shots. So you can actually get some really nice close macro shots with this and some good light. It tends to fall apart, as you expect, in low light a little bit. I was a little bit disappointed. I thought low light performance, from what I heard, would be a little bit better, but I took some shots in golden hour, like an hour before sunset, so it wasn't completely dark. There still was some light, but you didn't have perfect lighting, and so the autofocus struggled a little bit. It wasn't as fast to focus. Photos were coming out a little bit more blurry, and I just thought it should have a little bit better low light performance. It's not bad. I think it's still above average for a phone in this price range, but just what I heard, I thought low light would be a little bit better. Again, I'll show you some samples at the end of that as well. So that's kind of my quick take and first impressions on the camera there. Next, we can move on to audio performance. So Bluetooth connectivity, I believe this has Bluetooth 4.2. And so connecting to Bluetooth headphones sounds okay. Nothing to write home about. They sound just fine. But the true star here is this headphone jack. So when people are saying headphone jacks are overrated here in 2018 and we should just do away with them in favor for Type-C, I'm kind of disagreeing on that front, because I really thought the headphone performance here would just be okay, maybe a little bit above average, because Xiaomi does advertise that they do have a built-in amp in this thing. And so I thought that was really just marketing, and maybe it would sound a little bit better than most phones. But I gotta admit, when I plugged in some headphones into this headphone jack and took a listen for the first time, I was blown away. I mean, seriously blown away. If you plug some headphones into this headphone jack on this phone, you were gonna get some outstanding audio quality. And people aren't gonna like what I probably have to say, but this is the #2 phone for wired headphone listening for me. #1 is the HTC 10. Nothing's touching the HTC 10, including the LG V20, which I have. I don't have the V30, but the V20 and the V30 both have that quad jack, and the LG V20, to me, is the third best sounding phone. I think the HTC 10 is still better than it, and I actually think the Xiaomi Mi A1 is better than the LG V20. So I still think HTC 10 is #1. The Mi A1 is a very, very close second. I had to go ahead and pull out my HTC 10 and listen back to back with a bunch of different headphones because of how good the sound quality was here in the Mi A1. And this is just running a very, very close second. And third would be, for me, would be the LG V20 in phones that I have. So that is saying a lot, that this, to me, in my ears, actually sounds better than that quad jack. The only conclusion that I can come to is that they're actually using Qualcomm's DAC and amp, because that is available on the Snapdragon 625 SoC. I just didn't think Xiaomi would license that off for a phone in this price category. So if you like listening to headphones and you have some good wired headphones, I think you're gonna have a very good experience here. These were able to drive my high impedance, much more expensive headphones. And so that is very impressive, because not all phones can do that. For example, my Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus, they can drive it, but barely, and I have to crank it all the way to the top volume. But this thing, I don't even have to get all the way to the top. I can get almost to the top volume. It's gonna be more than loud and drive those high-end headphones. So that's very, very impressive. I also listen to my in-ear earbuds with this, some better, more expensive ones, some cheaper ones, and they all sound very, very good here on the Mi A1. So headphone jack performance on the Mi A1 just absolutely blew me away. I couldn't believe that you're getting that kind of quality audio in a phone in this price category. So now I want to quickly touch on battery life and my experience here for the last 2 days. And like I said before, the Snapdragon 625 tends to give phones really great battery life due to its efficiency. And this has a 3080 milliamp hour battery. And for the last 2 days, I've been getting some pretty good battery life. The first day I got, I think, over 5.5 hours of screen on time, and it easily lasted me the whole day and night. The second day, again, same thing, no problem lasting all day, all night. And I think I got almost 7 hours of screen on time. So depending on how you use it and how much you use it, you can expect some pretty good battery life out of the Mi A1 here. I'll continue to test that to see if that battery life holds up. But so far, battery life has been fantastic. So now let's get into connectivity here. I'm not having really any issues with calling or messaging, so phone calls sound fine. Text messages get through, no problem. And they don't advertise LTE bands here for the US, so it doesn't look like it has it, but I'm actually getting 4G LTE here in the US on T-Mobile. So you can see there it says 4G, and this is actually LTE speeds. So the only place I'm not getting LTE is in my workplace, which you would need band 12 for, and so I don't think this has band 12, so it's not going to penetrate that office building walls that I have, and so I get 3G there. But pretty much everywhere else, including right now my home, you can see I'm getting 4G LTE on this device. So even though they don't advertise those 4G LTE bands here for the US, they do work at least here on T-Mobile, and I've heard others with Cricket and AT&T are able to receive LTE as well. So if you're concerned about LTE on GSM networks like AT&T, Cricket, T-Mobile, Metro PCS, etc., I don't think you have to worry about it. It definitely does work in most areas that I've seen. It works here in the Bay Area of California, and some other folks around the country who have this are getting LTE on those networks. So that is very good news there. Of course, if you're on Verizon or Sprint here in the US, CDMA carriers, you're gonna be out of luck because this is just a GSM phone. But if you're wondering if you're gonna get LTE on these GSM carriers here in the US, it is definitely possible. I'm receiving it. Other people that I know that have this phone are receiving it. So that's a very good thing, even though those bands aren't advertised. The one downside on connectivity here is that you're actually not getting NFC. So you're not gonna have mobile payments or any kind of NFC usage here because you just don't get it here, which is a bit of a disappointment on this device. You also don't get Wi-Fi calling, but you do get voice over LTE, which is this enhanced 4G LTE mode. I just keep it turned off because I don't find it provides any benefits, and sometimes it can actually interfere with calls for me, so I just leave it off. But it is there if it works in your area. So the other great thing worth mentioning as far as connectivity is that you get dual band Wi-Fi. And so as you can see there, I'm connected to my 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. And so you don't always get dual band Wi-Fi on devices in this price point. So that's very good to see here on the Mi A1. And lastly, I want to talk about miscellaneous and lifestyle features. So things like wireless charging, you're not going to get because it is a metal back, no glass back. So no wireless charging and no official water certification. So no IP water resistance or waterproofing here on the Mi A1. I'm sure if you get it wet a little bit, it's not going to damage it, but if you dunk it in water, all bets are off. So there's no certification for water resistance or waterproofing here on the Mi A1. So that's pretty much going to do it for my first impressions after using this phone for 2 days. Like I said, I'll be rolling the sample photos and video footage right after this. But I gotta say, after using it for 2 days here as my primary phone, I'm very impressed. I'm getting LTE coverage, performance is great. The cameras are exceeding expectations. A little bit of suspect in low light yet. I'll do more testing on that. Battery life has been very good. And like I said, audio performance is phenomenal from this headphone jack. So if you're really into listening to audio through wired headphones, you're gonna love this phone. So stick around for the photos and videos. If you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below. If you've got a Mi A1, let me know what you think about it. And again, shout out to my subscriber who provided this for me to review. I'm very, very thankful because this has always been on my radar and I'm really enjoying the experience here so far with the Mi A1. I'll bring you follow-up videos, definitely a full review. I don't usually do that for 2 to 4 weeks because I really want to extensively use the device. But that's enough for me. Let's roll the photos and videos, and thanks for watching, everyone. Hey everyone, so here we are with the rear-facing camera of the Xiaomi Mi A1 at 1080p, 30 frames per second. So as you can see, it's a little bit of overcast today, but I want to give you some sample footage from the rear cameras here. And I'll pan around, aim it at that cell tower there, and we'll try to zoom in. So I think this has a 10 times digital zoom. So you can see it there, that's 10 times right there. And that's pretty shaky and very grainy. Try to back it out. maybe about 5 times here, so that's half the zoom, and then all the way back out. So this is also a good test. It's a little bit of low light. It's not really low light, it's kind of just before sunset, but it's overcast, so it's a little bit darker than it normally would be. And you can test the focus here against the post. So that focused up there, take it away, and focused in, focus back on the post. So focus may not be the fastest, and I think this is because it's a little bit overcast. Back on the post again. And there we go. So you can kind of see it focus in and out, and I think that's because it's not optimal lighting. Because taking pictures is pretty quick to focus with this thing, because it does have face detection autofocus, but we'll test the stabilization here at 1080p by walking down these stairs. And so hopefully that just gives you a little bit of an idea of the quality. I'll try to get more footage for maybe a full review or camera review, but I just wanted to give you a quick sample here in this first impressions. Okay, and here's a quick 4K test on the rear facing camera of the Mi A1. We'll pan around. We'll see what zoom looks like here in 4K. So still 10 times digital zoom. Still pretty grainy and pretty shaky. So we'll back it out to about half. So that's about half zoom at 5 times there. We'll pull it all the way back. And we can test the focus at 4K as well. So there we go. And a little bit of time to focus again. So, and see if we can get the focus. Yeah, it's struggling to focus here on this post. There we go. And we'll go off it, and then it focused again. So there we go. It's a little bit faster focus there. And it finally refocused. So still a little bit slow, and again I think that's because of low light. And again, a quick walking stabilization test in 4K. So all this is being shot handheld to give you an idea of what the footage will look like if you're just to walk around and use it without any kind of a mount. But there's some quick 4K footage for you from the Mi A1. And I just want to leave you with some front-facing footage from the Mi A1. So this is what you can expect as far as image quality from the front-facing camera here. Again, it's a little bit close to sunset and a little bit overcast, so it may look a little bit dark, but it's not looking too bad here in the viewfinder. Looks pretty crisp and clear. And I'll go ahead and walk around for you a little bit so you can see the stabilization. And again, I'm just hand-holding this in front of me. So hopefully this quick clip gives you an idea of what the stabilization is like on the Mi A1. Any questions or comments, leave them down below. And as always, thanks for watching.